All right, and good afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Franklin with an update on what is happening in the tropics. We still haven't seen a named storm form, but the Hurricane Center a little bit more confident that we will briefly see Tropical Storm Arthur tomorrow. Now, because of that and because of its proximity to land, it's basically over South Texas right now. Hurricane Center several years ago started using this naming feature, Potential Tropical Cyclone, for a system that is not yet developed, but this allows for warnings to be issued, a track to be issued as well, so folks can get that kind of heads up. This, honestly, though, is meaningless. The track for us, meaningless, because what we're more focused on is the pretty far off to the east of where that center of the storm may be, the heavy rainfall threat. Now, this is just one of many models, but it's something that can't be ignored. The fact that one of our high resolution models have been indicating areas of 15 to let's say 15 to 20 inches, maybe some areas even greater than that. This, again, is kind of on the high end of what we could potentially see. Depending upon exactly where the heaviest rainfall sets up, it's still possible it's not over southeast Louisiana, and also how long some of these heavy rainfall events last. That's a lot more uncertainty than certainty at this time. Now, this is a product that's actually issued by the National Weather Service. It's a little bit more of an average. And notice we don't have any of those high bullseyes. 5 to 7 inches of rainfall in a path from, say, the river parishes up toward the North Shore, maybe 3 to 5 across parts of South Mississippi, 2 to 3 plus inches of rainfall over the metro area. Now, again, that also possible, but some localized totals could easily exceed 10 plus inches of rainfall. So this is kind of the general idea of what we're looking at right now. Some models are calling for even more localized totals, and it's something we definitely have to pay attention to. And if we see some of those heavier totals on the North Shore, that could easily lead to several rivers overflowing their banks. So that's something we'll be watching very closely in the next couple of days. Here is a look at radar out of Brownsville, Texas. Again, the center of our PTC, Potential Tropical Cyclone #1, is still on land. A lot of rainfall offshore, and what'll be very interesting to watch is the eventual evolution of this system. Where it sits right now is in a pretty, even though over land, a pretty hospitable region. There isn't a lot that will be helping to keep this storm very weak. So at least in the near term, it does have the ability to develop. This is a look at visible satellite. You can clearly see that circulation on land, and the expectation is that it may be able to take advantage of the warm water and fairly conditional environmental conditions, I should say, over the part of the Gulf where it will be moving over warm water. What we're looking at right now, though, is not too much of a concern. What we're going to be watching later in the forecast period is strong wind shear. That is kind of twofold for us. One, the strong wind shear is good in that it keeps this as a very weak, kind of sloppy storm. The bad news is that that wind shear is pushing all of the heavy rainfall over southeast Louisiana. Now, it's very possible that the wind shear is even stronger and pushes this rain even farther off to the east, or if the center of the storm is farther to the east. In fact, this may be one of the situations where we're hoping the center of the storm is closer to us, because that would put the bulk of the heavier rainfall even farther off to our east. But just interesting to watch the tropical satellite forecast here, showing that this is not going to be a classic looking tropical system. Maybe briefly when it first emerges over the coastal waters of Texas, but as we get later in the day tomorrow and then going toward Thursday, an eventual landfall, I don't think it's going to look like a classic storm at all. Heaviest of the rainfall starts moving in late tomorrow night, or tomorrow afternoon and into the night, and continuing on into Thursday. So here's a look at precision cast. Notice the rain that we have around us on the North Shore right now will be wrapping up in the next couple of hours. Starting off early tomorrow morning, we are dry. We don't really start to get into that rain until more late afternoon and into the evening, and we will likely see some heavy rain. Then as we continue through the late night and early morning hours of Thursday, that is when we see the bulk of the rain. Waking up early Thursday morning, it shifts from the metro area to the North Shore, and it may be prolonged on the North Shore well into the late morning and early afternoon hours. So again, if that happens, then we would see some of the greatest totals on the North Shore. Again, this is just one model, but we're definitely looking at the potential for some heavy rain across much of southeast Louisiana. We're going to continue this update on our streaming app if you'd like to join us there. Otherwise, we'll return to regular scheduled programming.
This has been a severe weather alert from WWL Weather, sponsored by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
All right, and thank you for joining us here on WWL Streaming. I just want to update again what we've been watching steadily all morning long is the classification of our tropical wave as Potential Tropical Cyclone 1. And to kind of reiterate, if you were watching us on air, is that this naming just allows for the Hurricane Center to start issuing watches and warnings. Still not a named storm yet, but the expectation is that it will once it moves over the coastal waters of Texas. And notice it is not going to be over the water for very long. It is expected to only strengthen up to a very weak tropical storm, so barely at tropical storm strength. And really, as I'd mentioned, the forecasted cone is not nearly as important to us because what we're expecting is the heaviest of the rainfall, at least the way it's looking right now, to set up directly over southeast Louisiana. So what you see here is a widespread area of 5 to 9 inches of rain with some of these bullseyes, kind of extreme numbers, 15 to 20 plus inches of rainfall. That would be in some areas almost 2 feet of rain. That is an extreme, something that cannot be ignored. But when you look at what the Weather Service is saying, not nearly that high. They're calling for roughly 5 to 7, not nearly as much over the metro area, maybe 3 to 5 plus inches of rain across the Mississippi coast. So with that said, some models, and again, you can't completely ignore them, but it's a few of our high resolution models going with these high numbers, whereas right now on the average, the Weather Service is going much, much less than that. With that being said, though, there is definitely the potential for several inches, maybe 10 plus inches of rain in a few localized areas. Obviously, if that sets up on the North Shore, several of our rivers will be in danger of overflowing their banks. Here's what we know right now. The storm center is still over land. However, it is looking very well developed on satellite. And where it is right now, even though it's over land and going into early tomorrow, it'll remain in a fairly hospitable environment for further strengthening. And that's what the Hurricane Center is thinking, that in that brief window, it may be able to take full advantage of fairly hospitable conditions for development. It becomes more inhospitable the closer to land it gets because we're going to start to see some strong wind shear. And what would be interesting then is that this is never going to look like a classic tropical system. It really doesn't right now. When we're looking at visible satellite, I'll switch back here, you see the clouds all the way around that broad center. When I switch over to infrared, which colorizes the taller cloud tops, so where your heavier rain is, it's all removed to the east. So it's already feeling some of the effects of drier air on the western side. That dry air on the western side will actually increase due to wind shear. So look, as we head into early tomorrow morning, it'll be right around the time that this becomes a named storm. But there may be no storms, thunderstorms around the center. They'll likely be well removed to the east, which is why I said this is going to be one of those few rare cases that we're hoping the center is even closer to us, because that would shift the heaviest rainfall threat even more to our east. So what we're looking at as far as the timing goes, what rain we have around right now will be wrapping up later this afternoon and into the evening. So dry tonight and dry tomorrow morning. This is 7:15 in the morning. No rain around, or very limited. We go into the afternoon hours, still fairly limited. It isn't until late afternoon and going into the night that we really start to see some heavy rainfall rainfall setting up over the area. That continues into the overnight hours and maybe more of a focus early Thursday morning North Shore. Again, if that is the case, this is where we would see some of our highest totals. So, and this looks like a new model run. This is our graph model. This is our in-house high resolution model. This is a new run and still indicating the greater threat of the ongoing rain on the North Shore. Now, this is 8 a.m. on Thursday. Note the metro area drying out, but still some heavy rainfall in northern Tangi and Washington Parish. Continuing into the afternoon hours, but finally starting to see some breaks. Might have some scattered showers around with all that available moisture then coming to an end later on Thursday night. And then Friday will actually have more rainfall, but starting to see the rain chances taper off. What looks to be happening is that what will become Arthur is taking full advantage of this ample moisture available to it to produce some very heavy rainfall. That still looks to be the greatest threat to southeast Louisiana, the heavy rain and the flooding threat, and possibly deadly flooding depending upon where it occurs. Now, what we're looking at in water vapor is, first off, I was pointing out that strong wind shear. That's what's happening right now. But actually, sometimes wind shear, depending upon the position of a tropical system, is helpful for it. This is allowing for a good outflow. So as the thunderstorms grow taller into the atmosphere, those taller clouds need somewhere to go. Sometimes strong wind shear acts as a good exhaust. And so it looks like, at least in the near term, the storm may try and take advantage of that and intensify. But again, intensifying only to a weak tropical storm. Then, as we head later in the day on Wednesday, it starts moving into a much stronger sheared environment. That is why, again, kind of twofold. Good, it keeps this storm weak and sloppy. Bad, that wind shear is pushing all of that rain straight toward southeast Louisiana. So while it will help to keep the storm much weaker, it also could help to keep that rainfall right over us. Now, again, it's possible that this increasing wind shear pushes that rainfall even farther to the east and maybe more Mississippi, Alabama. And again, not that we wish it on anyone, but it's still not locked in that this is where the heaviest of the rainfall occurs, nor is it locked in with the rainfall totals that we could see from this event. As I'd also mentioned, because it is now a potential tropical cyclone, watches and warnings are being issued. So from Morgan City west, there is a tropical storm watch, meaning tropical storm conditions are likely within the next 36 hours. Those conditions would be increasing winds. Winds are not as much of a concern, as we are expecting some minor coastal flooding as the storm gets closer to us, and we'll see some strong wind gusts here. But overall, the winds, not as much of a widespread concern. Certainly some coastal conditions, yes, but not anything that I think we need to worry too much about. Again, if this only becomes a tropical storm, the max winds near the center would be at 40 miles an hour. Now, it could spread out a little bit more wide because a lot of the heavier rainfall will also be a little bit more to the east. So this is not ever going to be a classic looking tropical system. So with our weather impact alert continuing through Friday, really into Thursday because of the tropical system, but we still could have some heavy rainfall on into Friday. Greatest concern remains the flooding rain threat, and most of that arrives late Wednesday and into Thursday. Thursday, maybe afternoon. Becoming windy, again, if it does develop into a tropical storm, winds and the wind field will expand, and we could then see some minor coastal flooding. Right now, the storm surge heights for South Louisiana look to be at like 1 to 3 feet. Looking at radar right now, and I'm going to walk off camera here so I can kind of update what is on radar. We've had some heavy soaking showers, few flash flood warnings. Right now, a street flood advisory that includes not quite to Gramercy from some heavy rainfall, though it looks like kind of wrapping up there. Around the metro area, getting in on some moderate showers, and then north of the lake over the last couple of hours is where we've seen the bulk of our rain. As I'd mentioned, our computer model showing that a lot of this will be wrapping up in the next couple of hours. So going later into the evening, I think it'll be much, much drier. Starting off the day tomorrow dry, then the rainfall starts moving in by probably early afternoon, evening, and it'll only get heavier and more extensive as we continue through the overnight hours into Thursday morning and probably lingering into Thursday afternoon. So heavy rainfall from Wednesday into Thursday. The bulk of it, I need to put a little graphic here, 100% expected Wednesday night and into early Thursday. So about a 50-60% chance for some showers on Friday. But then this weekend, Father's Day, we are drying out but heating up. We may see some mid-90s as we head into early next week.